In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did.
When you think of Silent Hill, does it remind you of a place or a feeling? Is it just a town, or is it more like a state of mind? Silent Hill F is very different from the older fan favorites. Those games had a subtle way of sending a message that you couldn't fully understand on your first playthrough. Silent Hill F is similar in that sense, but also different. The gameplay and combat have changed for sure, but does the story and its core message also feel different? Silent Hill has always been about the supernatural, symbolism, metaphors, and the conflict between the easy choice and the right choice. That has always been the heart of the series. So the question is, does Silent Hill F follow the same theme? Even though it doesn't take place in the same original town, a lot of people assume Silent Hill F is just propaganda or disconnected from the old games. But is it really fair to judge it that way? Or does Hinako's story actually fit in the core themes of Silent Hill? Themes most people never give enough time to understand. The town of Silent Hill has always carried a dark spiritual weight. Long before it was a resort or prison town, it was sacred land near Toluca Lake, a region the native tribes called the Place of Silent Spirits. They believed powerful energies and forgotten gods remained there, shaping memory and fate itself. When settlers took over in the 1600s, that sacred balance was broken. Disease, violence, and death followed, as if the land rejected them. Over time, Silent Hill became a place built on suffering. Prisons filled with misery, hospitals overrun with sickness, and coal mines rose where shrines once existed. The more people tried to civilize it, the darker it became. By the 1900s, the town looked peaceful on the surface, but there was a hidden energy beneath that was anything but peaceful. Strange symbols appeared in the mines, people vanished, and rumors of a cult called the Order began spreading. Their rituals and sacrifices only accelerated the town's hidden supernatural power even further. Their cruelest act centered on a girl named Alessa, a child burned alive in a ritual meant to give birth to their god. Her pain created a darkness that was already there, and from that moment on, Silent Hill became more than a cursed town. It became a mirror for human sin, trauma, and guilt. A land where the line between the spiritual and psychological completely disappears. Ebisugaoka, though far from Silent Hill, carries a history just as cursed. A place born from old gods, poisoned land, and centuries of quiet suffering. Legends say its nightmare began with Orochi, the 8-headed dragon. When Orochi was slain, one of its heads crashed into the mountains and revived as a poisonous water dragon, filling the valley with deadly arsenic gas. Whether that story is true or not, the land was toxic, and the poison corrupted everything that came after. For many years, only hermits and exiles lived there. Then the defeated Tara clan fled into the valley to escape their enemies. Many died from the contaminated air and water, and out of fear, they turned the poison into belief, building shrines and praying to the water dragon for mercy. When hatred and tragedy followed them, the curse was sealed beneath a buried sword, and eventually, a massive cedar tree grew over it. Villagers believed it absorbed the evil and protected the valley, so they revered it as a sacred divine tree. But its power came from the very curse it held down. As generations passed, faith shifted. When the cedar tree burned down in a lightning storm, people saw it as a sign that the valley's guardian spirit had abandoned them. Into that void came a new god, Inari-sama, the fox deity of prosperity and fate. Fox shrines became more common, and the town's identity completely changed. Ebisugaoka became a place where blessings and curses became inseparable, where a fox sighting could mean good fortune or someone disappearing forever. At the center of all of this stood the Tsuneki family. Rumored to carry fox blood, they grew richer with every disaster. Their secret was darker than anyone imagined. Every generation, they sacrificed a chosen bride in a fox wedding to keep the dragon's curse sealed. Families were told their daughters had been taken to serve the gods, but they were simply offered up to maintain the town's fragile balance. Over time, these rituals were hidden behind stories of illnesses, accidents, and fox spirits reclaiming lost brides. By the 1900s, Ebisugaoka looked like a normal town on the surface, but the land underneath never healed. Arsenic geysers still erupted, earthquakes were felt all around the valley, and old wells turned toxic. Officials blamed geology, but the elders said the fox god was angry again. People left in waves, leaving behind only the devout, the elderly, and those too afraid to abandon tradition. In this isolation, superstition became law. Old families kept the faith alive through fear and influence. Women were expected to remain pure and obedient, and whenever a young girl died suddenly, the town whispered that a fox spirit had taken her as a bride. In truth, it was simply the Tsuneki rituals continuing in secret, the same cycle of sacrifice that had haunted Ebisugaoka for centuries. Silent Hill F takes place in the 1960s, in the quiet decaying town of Ebisugaoka. At its center is 17-year-old Hinako, a girl living in a seemingly normal household, but beneath the surface lies fear and resentment. Her father is an abusive alcoholic whose failed business and crushing debt to the influential Fujitori family have turned him bitter and violent. Her mother hides behind old traditions, believing a woman's duty is obedience, while her older sister has escaped by marrying into wealth, an illusion of freedom that traps her all the same. But Hinako doesn't want to end up like them. She pushes back against her father, questions her mother's expectations, and dreams of leaving the town for good. To her family and to the community, she's seen as a disgraceful daughter, and in 1960s Japan, where reputation and obedience mattered more than individuality, her rebellion leaves her completely alone. Every argument and every rough moment with the ones close to her slowly wears her down, leading to the horror that's about to unfold. One of Hinako's few escapes from home is her small circle of friends, the only people who bring some warmth to her otherwise heavy life. Yet, each friend represents a different part of herself, unintentionally testing how she deals with people and her own emotions. Shu is Hinako's calm, lifelong friend, a bond of quiet trust and understanding. His love for herbal medicine and chemistry, though a gift now, soon becomes a curse for Hinako. To her, he's a rare sense of peace in her chaotic world. Rinko is Hinako's opposite, cheerful, polite, and socially aware. She dreams of love, fashion, and a safe, predictable future, even harboring a quiet crush on Shu. To Hinako, Rinko embodies the future she's pressured to accept, comforting yet suffocating. Sakuko is the gentle, mysterious shrine maiden of the group, soft-spoken and attuned to voices from the gods. She senses danger long before the others. Her innocent faith reflects the pure, untroubled world Hinako has lost. Hinako feels drained by her life in this town, a fading place that feels more like a cage with its gossip, traditions, and her father's temper. She longs to escape somewhere her name means nothing, but the town itself seems to be decaying, its air filled with sulfur and the silence thick with unspoken fear. When Shu gives her a red capsule to help her with her headaches and anxiety, neither of them realize it'll become the quiet spark that changes everything. As the group wonders where everyone went, red flowers begin spreading through the town, climbing over the streets and buildings. A tall figure in white robes appears and attacks, breaking them apart. Hinako gets away, but now she's alone, being chased by strange, inhuman creatures. She fights them off and tries to keep going, but she's exhausted and eventually collapses as everything goes dark. Hinako wakes up in a dim, unfamiliar place. The air smells of incense, and the walls are covered in old symbols. A man wearing a fox mask steps out of the shadows, calm, polite, and strangely comforting. He tells her she's safe and leads her through the dark. But soon, she notices a small doll following her. It doesn't speak, but something about it tells her not to trust him. The warning doesn't come in words, but through something deeper, an instinct she can't ignore. As reality and nightmare start to mix, Hinako is attacked again. Her strength fades and she loses consciousness, marking the start of a transformation into something she's always feared becoming. As she keeps trying to escape the town, Hinako's mind begins slipping between the two worlds, the real one and the dark shrine, each with its own horrors. In the real world, she's constantly attacked by different kinds of monsters, while in the shrine, she's mentally tortured. There, she sees herself killing her friends, and slowly falling under Fox Mask's influence. He puts her through a series of strange and gruesome rituals. Her arm is replaced by a fox arm, her back is branded with a symbol, and a fox mask is surgically transplanted onto her face. When she returns to reality, she faces new monsters, the townspeople, her parents, and the white-robed figure that never truly left. It continues to haunt her until the very end, when she's finally forced to confront and defeat it. In the end, it's revealed that Hinako is actually a woman in her 20s, who lost her sanity during her wedding, killing everyone and running away under the influence of the pills Shu had given her to ease her headaches. So what's actually even happening in this game? On the surface, it's about a girl being forced into marriage because of tradition and culture. A big part of her rejects that path. She doesn't want to lose her agency or be chained down by society's expectations. She's seen what her parents and sister have become, and she refuses to turn into them. There are two major sides to this narrative, one spiritual and one metaphorical. Just like the original town of Silent Hill was haunted by supernatural forces, Ebisugaoka suffers from its own spiritual corruption. Its history is rooted in a rivalry between the gods that once ruled over the region. After Orochi was defeated, the Tsukumogami spirit became the main deity people followed, until it was replaced by the Inari fox god. The Tsukumogami grew vengeful, craving the devotion it had lost, and that ancient feud directly ties into Hinako's story. One of the biggest triggers for the events of the game is the medicine Shu gives Hinako for her headaches, those pills, and what's actually inside them. The drug draws the line between the real and the divine, connecting this game to the Silent Hill universe. The pills are made from the seeds of a flower called Hakukusu, which Shu's family cultivates in a very specific environment. The flower's extract can act as both a medicine and a dangerous hallucinogen. According to the lore, this flower was brought to Japan long ago by a Western missionary, and it shares identical properties with White Claudia, the hallucinogenic plant used by the Order in the main Silent Hill storyline. It allowed their followers to experience vivid visions and become devoted to the cult, explaining why different characters across the series see such personal monsters. More than just a hallucinogen, the flower is rumored to let users transcend into the spiritual realm, which is likely what happens to Hinako. Hinako herself has rare special blood, something the Inari clan has sought for generations to maintain their power. The combination of that blood and the number of pills she unknowingly took allowed her to cross into the Dark Shrine, the Inari spiritual domain where the rituals take place. The man in the fox mask whom Hinako meets there is someone she actually knows, Kotoyuki Tsuneki, a boy from her childhood. When they were young, Hinako once helped him and a wounded fox. But after the fox bit him, Kotoyuki changed completely, like he'd been reborn, an empty shell of who he was. He's also the man Hinako was arranged to marry, for reasons that benefited both families. Kotoyuki came from the wealthy Fujitori family, from whom Hinako's father had borrowed money. The marriage was his way of clearing his debts. In return, the Tsuneki family would gain Hinako, the girl with the rare blood. The tragic part is that the one person at the center of it all, Hinako, never had a choice. Or at least that's how it seems on the surface, until we read a few notes that may suggest a slightly different narrative. If Hinako becomes the Fox Bride, it strengthens the Inari spirit, the opposite of what the Tsukumogami, the rival spirit, wants. The Tsukumogami uses Hinako's childhood doll as its vessel, trying to stop the marriage by reminding her she still has agency and doesn't have to accept her fate. But things aren't that simple. Neither of these spirits truly care about Hinako herself. They only want to win their ancient feud. This is where the symbolism of the spiritual rituals starts shadowing the metaphorical reflection in Hinako's life. The two gods weren't fighting for Hinako, they were fighting at the cost of Hinako. The gods themselves aren't purely good or evil, they're imperfect. And if the gods are flawed, then what hope does humanity have? Every person drawn to Silent Hill is broken in some way. Not because they choose to be, but because life tends to break everyone eventually in some way or the other. The town doesn't just punish sin, it exposes the cracks that were already there. James felt trapped in a situation that wasn't truly his fault, but it wasn't Mary's fault either. Both were victims of circumstance, and yet James did something unforgivable, and Silent Hill made him face that. Eddie and Angela were also pushed beyond their limits, bullied, abused, and cornered until they did something really bad just to escape their pain. Alessa was just a child who never did anything wrong, but she suffered more than anyone else. Her pain didn't come from guilt, it came from the cruelty of others. Her mother's blind faith, the cult's obsession, and the town's corruption broke her completely, and because of that pain, Silent Hill became what it is. The nightmare that others fall into later exists because of what was done to her. Her suffering changed the town itself, turning her trauma into a curse that traps anyone who's broken. Heather, who was born from Alessa, ended up carrying that same burden. She wasn't guilty of anything, but she inherited all the pain and darkness that Alessa left behind. Her story isn't about making up for sin, it's about trying to break free from it. She fights to end the cycle of suffering that started with Alessa, and to take back control of her own life. So all these messages roughly translate into a few ideas. There's a side of you capable of doing bad things, not because you're inherently evil, but because life and circumstances can push you there. Silent Hill's horror isn't in the monsters you fight. It's the person you have become inside who created those monsters. Everyone has guilt, pain, or regret buried deep down, and the town simply forces you to face it. Even when it's not your fault, it's still your responsibility not to let that darkness take over. Denying it only makes it stronger. It changes you from the inside until you're not really sure who you are anymore. And the same goes for how we treat others. You have to be wise enough to know when your actions are adding to someone else's pain, pushing them closer to the edge. It's only when we recognize our flaws and correct ourselves that we can break the cycle of suffering before it spreads to others or leaves lasting damage. We are reminded that suffering doesn't always come from sin. Sometimes it's just a part of being human. But facing that pain instead of running away from it is the only way to escape it. In the end, the message is simple. You can change what's inside you, but you can choose what you do with it. So is this theme present in Silent Hill F? Well, in my opinion, more than you think. The conflict between the two gods is basically a one-to-one reflection of Hinako's internal struggle and the different paths her life could take. There are two sides of the same coin, order and chaos, both with flaws. The Tsukumogami represents Hinako's freedom and agency, the part of her that refuses to live under anyone's expectations, whether cultural, societal, or personal. It's independence taken to the extreme. I'll do whatever I want, even if it hurts me. The Inari clan, on the other hand, represents order and stability, but stability through control. And control is exactly what Hinako fears the most, because authority has always been used to silence her and strip away her agency. Traditionally, marriages like the one forced on Hinako worked more like transactions than unions. The bride was expected to assimilate into the groom's family, often losing her old life in the process. Less contact with her parents, less freedom, and a new identity defined entirely by her husband's household. She hates the thought of this. To her, marriage becomes a complete erasure of self, which is why she sees her bridal form as the white-robed monster, a version of her that no longer exists as Hinako Shimizu. Her anger towards her parents and the violence against her friends in the Dark Shrine reflect that fear. In her mind, once she joins the new family, the people she knew won't be part of her life anymore. So the nightmare shows her getting rid of them the same way her future would. The tricky part is her pre-bridal self, the version of Hinako going through the rituals. She technically isn't being forced. She participates willingly. This represents the part of her that even she struggles to understand. The half-fox, half-human Hinako, who isn't fully against the marriage, but isn't happy about it either. Her journal even shows she knows this about herself. She admits she can be rebellious for no reason, refusing help even when she needs it. She wants to learn how to let others in, but being vulnerable is uncomfortable for her. Contrary to what the game visually suggests, her parents and Kotoyuki aren't the true villains. The real antagonist is conformity, the pressure to follow tradition without question, to fit into a rigid role or be labeled as an outcast. It's a cycle of pain passed down through generations, from times when strict structure was necessary to survive wars and poverty. But it's still a human construct, one that hurts people who don't fit in its mold. Men were expected to lead and provide. Women were expected to support and obey. The issue isn't the system existing, it's the expectation that everyone must follow it, and the exclusion of anyone who doesn't. Hinako's father becomes her personal hell. And while nothing excuses his behavior towards his wife and daughter, the game implies he was drowning under immense pressure. His debts and loans were likely taken to afford medical treatment for Hinako's mother. He did it because he felt he had to, not because he wanted to. The stress on him was too much, and he handled it in one of the worst possible ways. Hinako's mother plays a quieter role in the same damage. She had the responsibility to protect Hinako and failed, but she also depended on her husband for survival. She dealt with the same shame and pressure he did, and it pushed her into a corner too. A part of Hinako loves her parents and wants to listen to them, but she also wants the chance to express her own feelings, rather than being treated like a child with no voice. Kotoyuki is also a victim. Throughout the whole story, he is used as a tool by the gods. He isn't acting through true free will, he's being puppeted to uphold a path he never chose. Just like the rigid expectations in real life, this path continues whether you're the one suffering or the one enforcing it, causing the same cycle of pain to repeat endlessly. The game has 5 endings. Now, excluding the comedic alien ending, the other 4 main ones fit together surprisingly well. You can almost imagine them happening in different corners of Hinako's fractured timeline at the same time. In the first ending, it's revealed that everything we just played through was Hinako's mental breakdown during her real wedding day. She isn't a schoolgirl. She's actually a 20-year-old woman who snaps under the pressure of the arranged marriage and the pills she's been taking. In this version, she kills everyone at the ceremony, losing herself completely to the psychological torment she's been carrying. The second ending shows the opposite path. Instead of fighting, Hinako accepts the marriage and gives into her bridal self. She becomes the white-robed monster, a symbolic version of what happens when a person abandons their identity to fit an expectation they never wanted. It's a tragic submission ending, where she chooses duty over self and becomes part of the very curse that destroyed her. The third ending is where Hinako finally stands up for herself. Her human self defeats her fox self, and she rejects the marriage entirely. When Kotoyuki attacks her, who is now possessed by the fox spirit, she fights back and wins. She escapes the cursed fate forced on her, leaving the town with Shu, as the population is quietly evacuated because of deadly gas spreading throughout the town. Symbolically, this ending is about reclaiming autonomy. Hinako ruins the fox's wedding and chooses her own life at the cost of her home and her past. It's hopeful, but not perfect. She survives, but the scars remain. In the fourth ending, the happy ending, Hinako doesn't reject one side of herself. She unifies both. Her human self and fox self finally reconcile, giving her the strength to confront the real forces behind her suffering, both gods. The fox ancestor controlling Kotoyuki and the Tsukumagami tied to her doll manifest, and Hinako defeats their corrupted forms. The curse lifts, Kotoyuki is freed from possession, and the arranged marriage is peacefully annulled. Hinako returns to what's left of Ebisugaoka with closure. She and Kotoyuki part ways as equals, promising that if they ever meet again, it should be voluntary, not forced. This ending represents breaking the cycle of inherited trauma and reclaiming identity from forces that once dictated her life. The metaphorical dilemma here is clear. Hinako is trapped in a cycle where every choice feels wrong. If she lets herself be vulnerable, she risks losing her identity to a future she never chose. A voiceless wife shaped by the expectations around her, but rejecting that path entirely makes her feel like she's becoming part of the same generational cycle of pain she fears. It's the same kind of inner conflict the older Silent Hill stories explored, a person torn between who they have become and who the world insists they must be. In older games, characters were often haunted by the people they already became. In Silent Hill F, Hinako is haunted by the person she's being pushed to become. Others ran from the weight of their past. Hinako runs from the weight of her future. Their nightmares take different forms, but they behave the same, manifestations that hurt them until they finally turn inwards and face the truth they've been avoiding. Silent Hill F follows the long-running pattern of the series, people breaking under pressure they never asked for. Some collapse under what they've done, others under what's been forced onto them, but the result is always a slow, painful erosion of identity. Cruelty, expectations, and tradition twist a person into a shape they no longer recognize. Their pain becomes fuel for something much larger than themselves. The cycle only ends when a person finally chooses to confront themselves, free themselves from expectations they never chose, and take back a future that was never meant to belong to them in the first place. Each monster Hinako faces is a piece of her fear made physical. Her anxieties, her doubts, her terror of being erased. These monsters aren't random horrors. They're the emotions she's buried so deeply that she forgot they were there, now pulled to the surface where she can no longer ignore them. Silent Hill in every era has always worked this way. The world reflects the person more than it harms them. This is what most people completely overlook. We aren't just watching a girl trying to escape an arranged marriage. What the entire game shows us is a personal conflict inside Hinako. Deep down, she does want some vulnerability in her life. The chance to let someone in so she doesn't have to keep fighting alone anymore. But at the same time, she's terrified of the responsibility, commitment, and emotional strength that come with that choice. We are seeing her suppress trauma in action, trauma that has been building for years throughout her childhood, and the choices she makes in these moments define who she is. Whether she takes the easy path or the right one is the entire point of her struggle. That's why the rituals are so difficult. They're a symbolic way of showing us just how hard it is for her to become someone who can open up, trust, and depend on someone else. She's resentful that tradition is forcing this moment on her before she's ready, but she isn't completely against the idea either. She just isn't ready yet, which is exactly what the good ending suggests. She needs more time to think, to grow, and to let things unfold at their own pace. This is why the game isn't propaganda. It follows the same Silent Hill formula of an internal struggle being forced out of a person, even if the process requires blood, trauma, or even death. Just like other protagonists fighting silent battles in worlds shaped by their own pain, only Hinako truly understands what her world looks like. That's what makes this series so obscure. We can't ever fully understand someone else's inner world unless we stand in their shoes. All we can do is try to empathize with the battles they're fighting, and the forces that push them through their personal hell, no matter the cost, as long as they keep moving forward. Silent Hill F isn't focused on society as a whole. It's focused on one individual's fear and resentment which comes from that society. The horror is shaped by the character, their wounds, their silence, their shame. No two people see the same nightmare because no two people carry the same burden. Hinako's nightmares don't exist to punish her, they exist to reveal her. Every shrine, every ceremony, every distorted version of her bridal self is just the foreshadowing of a life that denies her voice. Your voice matters more than anything that claims ownership over your fate. The supernatural is simply a mirror. The place itself, whether it's a quiet American town or a decaying Japanese valley, isn't designed to kill you, it's designed to expose you. It punishes denial, it punishes silence, but it always rewards the terrifying difficult decision to finally be honest with yourself. Hinako's freedom comes from finally refusing to run from the mental fortitude and the rationale she needs to define herself on her own terms. Whether she breaks, submits, escapes, or heals, every ending circles back to the same truth the series has always carried. You can't change where you came from, you can't control every weight placed on your shoulders, but you can choose who you become. Even when the world tries to write your entire story for you, the final page still belongs to you.